everyone, and welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I try to discover how things work in the world around me and how we can make them better. And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dog Cat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Thursday. Tempestuous Thursday. Yes, we return once again to the wonderful world of TED Talks. Yeah, this is a TED Talk, not a TEDx. Now, I never said that TED Excellence would always be just TEDx Talks, but, you know, the world of TED, more or less. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope you've had a good week so far. I was going to say something, but instead of trying to say something, I'll say hello. And who would I say hello to? Why, Fun Time Bats, hello. Matt Barnes, hello. Zalbla, hello. John Miller, hello. St. Michael, hello. Jim T. Maxey, hello. Your boy, Pat, hello. Let's see, who else? Debate Fly, hello. Irate Prostate, hello. Brian Wilson, hello. Check Your Logic, hello. Robin Eckison. I'm trying, I really am. Raziel, hello. Uvo Zod, hello. Birgid, hello. Or Brigid, hello. Brigid, Birgid, Brigade, hello. Lexi Mads, hello. Lil Mo Sizzlack, hello. Zeke Weiss, hello. Deco, hello. And then jump, because of course it does. Gil Cato, hello. Guile Cato. You guys are throwing me for a loop here. Johnny Stoffel, hello. MCRN Doniger, hello. Always Lost on Nothing Else, hello. Mr. Tickle Trunk, hello. Dark Resurrect, hello. Mowbray, hello. Corey Suzuki, hello. Counterculture Wise, hello. Roger Reynolds, hello. Ethan Robbins, hello. I think I got everybody, or at least most everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. Let's see. So today's topic is a little bit off kilter from my usual fare. I came across this one. It says, an election system that puts voters, not politicians, first. With the recent law scandal, drama, however you want to classify it, in Georgia, where, amongst other things, the biggest point of contention seems to be requiring voter identification, or photo identification, I guess I should say, or some form of valid identification in order to qualify to vote in the state. That apparently only targets specific racial demographics in a negative way. That's the pitch I've heard. But that's kind of beside the point. Just that drama, that controversy caused me to think, maybe this might be something worth looking at. Except I have no idea what our speaker's going to say. I don't know if she's going to say something about the Georgia law situation. I don't know if this is recorded before or after that. I don't know if she's going to say something about the Electoral College. I don't know if she's going to say something about gerrymandering. And it is gerrymandering, not gerrymandering, because the guy's pronunciation of his last name was actually Gary, not Jerry, because I'm a smartass. Anyway, I don't know. But I thought we'd check it out. And as well, given the fact that it's not a title or a subject that is usually buzzword rich, let's say, I don't know that the bingo card is going to come into play much today. It could be a relatively dry presentation. I guess we'll find out. But speaking of bingo cards, today's bingo card is bingo card A. A as in apathy. Sure, why not? Links to the bingo cards can be found in the description below if you want to get your bingo card ready. But with all that as preamble, I will start off with a few seconds for a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear this, and then we will begin. Okay, well, did you hear the applause at least? This time I don't have to cut her off. If you heard the applause, then we're good to go. Dr. Keeve, since I came home late again, I don't think I can greet everyone individually. I hate road construction. Well, Keeve, for the most part, I've greeted a lot of people individually. The Original Shroom, hello. Shadow Sonata, hello. Just Paul, hello. Texas Attorney General Secret Agent, hello. Thank you, been called the Driving Ape Man. The Moonbase shirt fits nice. See your DM. Oh, okay. Oh, do I have a photo of you in your lovely t-shirt? I do. Oh boy, the Moonbase shirt on a pink hollow. That's cool. I'm glad you like it. Yes, I don't shill it enough. I've started to get better at it. There's a link to my merchandise Teespring page in the description below as well if you'd like a Ted Excellent shirt or a Moonbase shirt or a coffee mug with my face and logo on it, whatever you prefer. Anyway, people hear that? Sounds good, says Just Paul. Applause is fine, says Lexi Mads. All right, so let us find out about I'm assuming, a new election system that is for the voters and not for the politicians.
Voting can be hard.
You mean the actual physical act of it or the deliberations towards making a vote? I know, I'm being a smartass.
It's been hard, sometimes painful, sometimes impossible since the very beginning of our democracy.
I guess it depends on what you mean, but okay.
This year and years prior, we've seen voters wait in line for 5, 6, and 7 hours. And the issue hasn't been fixed.
Okay, I will concede. In those states that still have voting where you have to show up to the poll and have to wait in line and so on and so forth, there's got to be a better way. I've always thought that you should extend voting for like more than just one day. I mean, why not? Effectively, when people get their mail-in ballots, they've got a couple of weeks to fill out their vote or their ballot and then send it in. Why can't states that have still in-person voting, at the very least, extend the amount of time or the amount of days wherein you can vote? I think that makes more sense. But, okay, long lines are a problem. Uh-huh.
Now, some people may see these images and think, how patriotic. How impressive that someone would wait in line for 7 hours just to vote.
I mean, it is impressive. It's not necessarily viable for a lot of people who work for a living, but all the same, yes, voting is a patriotic act in and of itself, regardless of what side of the aisle you fall on.
But to me, it's not impressive at all. It's disrespectful to these voters.
The waiting? Again, I might come down on the same side as you on that point. I mean, it depends, but what's your solution then?
Making voting difficult goes against the very core of our democracy.
Is it making voting difficult, like an intentional act, or is it just a poorly managed system? What's the accusation here?
If we could redesign the system to make it more convenient, more accessible, and easier for voters, why wouldn't we?
I agree. What is your proposal?
Now, the short answer is political will. Many established politicians would not actually benefit personally from a reformed voting process that's inclusive for all voters.
Well, I mean, different states have different systems, so give me the contrast of how hard it was to pull off, all mail-in ballots in one state versus another. Because voting is, not all voting systems by state are the same.
Politicians are the players in the game, but yet they set the rules for the game.
Sort of. Voting in politicians and voting on measures to change things, that's all part of the process. Okay.
Election policy must be about who votes, not who wins.
Yes. I'm sorry for all the pausing. I just want to make sure I'm getting things as they come in, because I always feel like I'm getting Trojan horsed in some instances.
And the more complicated answer is that our voting system and election system in the United States is highly decentralized and inconsistent.
You're going to have to go state by state, because each state has its own idiosyncrasies when it comes to their voting. What are you talking about?
Over 10,000 different local election officials administer this process in cities and towns and counties across the country. They might vary in size from 400 voters to 4.7 million. There's also 50 different state legislative bodies that set the rules of the game.
Yes, set the rules of the game per state. Thank you, Drew W. These people think minorities will only vote Democratic. I don't know where she's going with this yet, but let me just take a step back. There is an argument to be made about standardizing the voting process on the federal level, okay, in some fashion, I guess. I don't know what that would be. But there's an element that always gets kind of left out of this equation, whether we're talking about the Electoral College or anything else, is the idea of state sovereignty. I understand, and it's easy to forget, that even though we're, the United States and you can travel from one point to the other in your car and not have to go through checkpoints or have different passports and all that kind of stuff, it's still a united collection of individual states. And respecting and keeping some separation between, one state and the other, the federal government and state sovereignty, that's still an important factor you have to consider. So again, I don't know where she's going to go here. If she's going to talk about finding a way to standardize voting practices or procedures, in some instances, I might be on board, but I just want to bring up the whole, state sovereignty thing is still kind of a deal.
And over 50 different chief election officials and entities that oversee those rules and how they're administered.
Yes.
So voting may vary greatly from state to state.
Yes, I already made that point. So, okay.
Best case scenario, you're in a state like Colorado, and a ballot is mailed to you proactively before each and every election.
Uh-huh.
No bureaucracy, no extra paperwork. The ballot comes, and the government is responsible for delivering democracy to you.
Okay, so that's your preferred method, direct mail, that kind of thing. Okay. Yeah, things are different state by state, but then everybody lives in a specific state. Their place of residency has to be in one state. So it's not like I'm moving from state to state every day and having to rememorize some new systems or something. So I'm not quite sure what that argument's about.
Worst case scenario, you're in a state like Missouri.
Oh.
Where your options are limited.
Okay.
You have overly restrictive voter registration deadlines.
How?
And if you can't get off work, or you don't have childcare, or you're sick, that's too bad. And most American voters don't fall into the best case scenario.
Okay, so you're advocating for mail balloting or mailed ballots, basically. That's the best case scenario. Okay. Thank you, Dark Resurrect. State sovereignty, please scribe. We don't peddle myths here. Clearly, only the federal government holds power. At least that's what a certain side says. And like I say, I can forgive a lot of people for sort of forgetting that, the state sovereignty thing is still a deal, because we are, our state borders aren't exactly like, they're not policed, they're not guarded. We don't treat each state as a different country or anything. And with communication having modernized the way it is, and our sort of sense of interconnectivity, we all feel like we're just one big giant state in a way. But when it comes down to it, legally, culturally, by practice, by law, and so on and so forth, there is a separation there, and it's part of the process. So anyway, thank you. We're listening here. The UK has nearly 50 million registered voters. Never any issues with lines. ID votes always counted in a few hours. Yeah, but the UK is kind of one thing, and we do have 50 different systems with 50 different bureaucracies and 50 different et cetera, et cetera. So in that sense, she's got a point in that the efficiency of getting everything put together, but each state should have its own system down to the point where they can get things done in a reasonable amount of time. So again, if she's going to recommend mail-in voting be the standard, I mean, I would prefer that if state A wants to have mail-in voting, that's fine. If state B doesn't, and they have the restrictions as he describes in like Missouri, and I don't know all the details about Missouri, but I'll just take her word for it for the sake of things. Again, I think extending the amount of time you have to vote, regardless, like what is the time frame in Colorado, the example she brings up, where the ballots are mailed and they have to be received? What is the standard amount of time? A week, 2 weeks, something like that? Okay, why couldn't that same amount of time be applied to states that don't have mail-in ballots? They don't have to take on mail-in ballots, but the time frame in which to vote, I think an equitable amount, state to state, would make more sense, if nothing else. I don't know what the logistics would be to that, but that seems more like a reasonable compromise to me, at least. Thank you, the One-Ton Hammer. States' rights are paramount, but you're participating in a federal election. Those who hold the vote make the rules. Yes. But then we get into the Electoral College part. And it depends on what she's talking about, too. Is she talking about federal elections? Is she talking about local elections? I'm assuming federal. Anyway.
Now, in my career as an elections official for many years, and now leading the National Vote at Home Institute and our work to improve the voting process across the United States, I've talked to thousands of voters about their voting experience and thousands of election officials about the process. I also co-authored a book called When Women Vote that outlines a roadmap and a playbook for how to improve the process for all.
Then why is your book called When Women Vote? Maybe there's something in the book that explains that. It just seems a little odd. Why split it up that way? I don't know.
And so I ask you, what would you choose? Which scenario would you choose? Now, the 2016 election was the most highly watched, most anticipated election in U.S. history.
Probably, but I think it might have been eclipsed by the 2020 election. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, especially given the preamble and certainly the aftermath, but I guess we can, set that aside for the historians.
And yet, only 60% of eligible Americans actually voted.
Is that because they were prevented from doing so or because they chose not to? And how do you know the answer to that question?
100 million people, over 100 million people, did not vote in 2016. And when they were surveyed as to why, over 40% indicated it was due to a barrier, missing a deadline, couldn't get off work, couldn't wait in line for hours.
40%, over 40%, so like 41, 43. So less than half, or I should say more than half of the country voted because they didn't want to. Okay. Thank you, John Miller. Is this going to be like is this going to be like those make sure to vote unless it is against my ideology kind of things? I don't get that so far. It sounds like she's advocating for nationwide mail-in voting. That's what it sounds like she's advocating for. You have more time. You don't have the physical barriers of having to wait in line. Like I said, no time crunch. You're not limited geographically and so on. So as far as I can tell, she's going roundabout advocating for mail-in balloting or mail-in voting, as far as I can tell.
If did not vote was on the ballot in 2016, did not vote would have won in a landslide.
Yeah, but that's not how that works. So what? Tell us about the other 50+%. What was their reason that they didn't vote?
What we end up with is a system where a minority of eligible Americans are choosing the politicians that make decisions for all of us collectively.
Well, tell me about the larger than 50% that didn't vote that you didn't mention. Why didn't they vote? I mean, again, I don't disagree that as many barriers in time and space as you can eliminate to allow people to vote, because people do have to work and people do have families. Like I say, I'm all for, at the very least, extending the amount of time people have to vote. But outside of that, you're always going to have a certain percentage of the population that is either not interested and or apathetic and or not voting is in a way their way of expressing themselves. Why aren't you talking about the larger percentile of people who didn't vote? At least give them a mention.
Trust in the US government and politicians is at an all-time low, and the ballot box isn't helping. If we can't even cast a vote easily, why would we ever trust the process or trust politicians?
Okay, so is the problem not trusting the government, or is the problem that you're prevented from voting, but you would if you could? Maybe I missed something here.
We must put voters first.
Uh-huh.
I'll say that again. We must put voters first.
We must put voters first.
In election policies and designing a system that serves them.
I don't disagree in spirit, but I'm waiting for your sales pitch. If it's just mail-in voting, then okay, I guess we'll see how that goes. Thank you, Drew W. so much. I'm sure she'd be okay if the GOP made the federal rules for voting. This isn't about having one unified way of voting to make it easier. It's a call for Democrats' way to vote. Georgia mail-in is easier than Colorado mail-in votes. I mean, again, I don't know what her sales pitch is yet. So far, she's just said waiting in line and having a limited window of time to vote is not desirable. And in this day and age and all and so forth, I would agree. Okay, she says that the Colorado model is desirable. If she's just talking about mail-in balloting, I don't know if I would say mail-in balloting, mail-in voting. But anyway, okay. So I guess my major question is, all right, you prefer this way of voting to another way, all right? How do you propose to make that the standard if that's what you're aiming for? Or at least make it the option that someone has if they can't physically vote for some reason. And as far as I know, even in states where you know, waiting in line is one thing, don't most, if not all, have some alternative way to get your vote in if you can't make it to the poll? You know, absentee ballots and such. I mean, it might not be the best system or the most desirable, but it's still there, isn't there?
Just ask any successful business.
Uh-oh.
We live in an era of same-day shipping, free delivery, Lyft and Uber, and take-home cocktails.
Are you really going to compare Uber to the election process? Okay, so do you want to digitize the election process? I mean, I don't know if that's what she's saying, but that's a very poor analogy if she is.
And consumers, especially in the height of the pandemic, are choosing their experiences in the comfort of their home and on their schedules.
The pandemic is not going to last forever. In the grand scheme, this is a blip. We cannot reshape our entire world around one event that has a limited lifespan.
So why can't we design a voting process that is as convenient as that?
Please do not suggest we start doing electronic voting. You want to open up a Pandora's box to questions of legitimacy, even more so than we saw in the last election, that'll do it. I really hope you're not going that direction. I've done a TEDx on this before, actually. It was not a pretty sight.
Luckily, we don't have to speculate. In Colorado, we've already designed that process. And Colorado is now one of the best states to vote in and also one of the most secure.
I'll just have to take your word for it because I'm imagining you're not going to give us any information or statistics on that, but all right.
In 2013, I worked with a group of dedicated leaders to redesign our voting process and pass legislation that put voters first.
Okay, so I maybe I missed it. Is she a representative or an activist in Colorado specifically? Did I miss that part? Okay.
In Colorado, every voter receives a ballot ahead of each election.
Mm-hmm.
They're automatically registered to vote.
Mm-hmm.
There's no overly restrictive deadlines.
Automatically registered to vote. How does that work? I know I'm not going to get an answer here probably, but automatically registered.
And with ballot trace, voters can track their ballot just like they would a package through the process, from the moment it's mailed to the moment the election official receives it for counting.
Okay.
Now, that system was pioneered in Denver now 11 years ago. And when we designed it, we were able to reduce our call volume by 70%.
Your call volume? I honestly don't know what she's referring to. Your call volume?
And infuse transparency and accountability into the process. Now, when you get that ballot at home, you can vote it and then mail it back in or drop it off in person. And if you want to vote in person, you can do that too. And you're not confined to the government-assigned polling places on one day.
Again, I'm not going to disagree with the notion of extending the amount of time and options available to someone to vote. I think one day to vote on a specific day is too constricting. But if a state wants to do physical voting, for the most part, they should be allowed to do so. You've changed things in Colorado. Great. Works for Colorado. That's fine. And if enough initiative, not necessarily the legal kind or the legislative kind, but enough will of the people changes things in Missouri, for example, or elsewise, so be it. What are you arguing for? Just that every state should follow Colorado's model? You could say that in like 5 minutes and not 10. Thank you to Gay Rascal for the dancing Dog Cat Fox. Oh, Dog Cat Fox, thank you so much. Thank you again, Drew W. When they get an ID, they are registered to vote. Okay. So once you get your driver's license, your state ID or whatever, it's like that. It's just part of the process. You're immediately registered to vote. Okay. I didn't know what she meant automatically. So, okay.
You can go to any vote center, close to your kid's school, close to work, close to home.
Yeah, no, I get it. Thank you, Dark Resurrect. So if they do international mail-in voting, are states actually going to adhere to election laws and not change them last minute? I'm assuming that regardless of whether or not every state does the same process, it would the tallying and everything would still happen in the state and not be like some central hub in Washington, D.C. or something. You know what I haven't been doing? Paying attention to the bingo card. So let's take a look at that real quick. Collectivize its own demographic. No, not in any particular way as far as I can tell. Systemic institutional. She's talking about voting systems. Does that count? Equity, no. Childhood or family anecdote, no. Diversity and inclusion. She did say inclusive, didn't she? Yeah, to make sure everything's inclusive. Okay. Circling diversity, inclusion, and free space. Plays victim, no. Microaggressions, unconscious bias, no. Privilege, no. Contradicts own point or argument, no. Patriarchy, no. Weightless example, no. Wage gap, no. Feminism, no. Marginalized, marginalization. I mean, that might be something to assess at the end of the presentation, because she's talking about people being disenfranchised effectively. So that could fall within marginalization by the end of it. A list. She did give us a list of other options and ways in which people can vote in Colorado and so on. So circling that one. White supremacy, no. Word salad. No, I've understood what she said so far. Self-vilification or wretchedness, no. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. She brought up her book, which talks about, is it How Women Vote or something? But I don't know what that's supposed to mean, and it'd be more inclusive. Was she just talking about suffrage and that kind of thing? I'll wait on that. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. Not yet. Mind reading assumes motives. She's assuming the motives of the politicians, that this is all the politicians doing, that anything that isn't mail-in voting is obviously in favor of the politicians. Is it, though? I'll sit on that one as well. Benevolent condescension? Not yet. Anecdote that probably never happened. She hasn't really given us any anecdotes, per se. Leaves out vital context. No, I mean, it is not untrue that people wait in line. It is not untrue that people having limited availability to childcare during the course of their regular day can be a factor and so on. No, not yet. I mean, nothing vital, I guess I should say. But again, at the end of the presentation, guys, if you have squares you think should be circled, you can debate them then. Come on. That I said.
And you can do so over a few weeks prior to the election.
Yes.
It's been 7 years since we passed that legislation and implemented that model.
Okay.
And the results are incredible. Colorado increased turnout significantly.
Okay.
And now is one of the top states for voter turnout and also one of the most secure.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. Just for the sake of argument, I'll take your word for it. What do you propose to do about Missouri, as an example? Right? What do you propose to do? If registration is inherently dependent on a valid identification, let's say driver's license, state ID, and so on, then you would not disagree with the process currently being implemented or attempting to be implemented in Georgia. And again, I know I'm asking rhetorically, but we've already had that comparison made that Colorado's voter ID laws are more restrictive than Georgia, or at least as restrictive. If you're only registered because you've also gotten an ID in the state, so one is, entwined with the other, I wonder what she would say about the Georgia votes or the Georgia laws currently going on right now.
We also saw a reduction in costs. So because more people were voting at home, we didn't need as many poll workers.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that reduced by over 70%.
Okay.
When we went to buy a new voting system, we no longer needed as much equipment. We also saw voters go farther down the ballot to local races and ballot issues. And we saw turnout increase on those down ballot races and issues. Okay, so mail-in voting is the ideal situation in our speaker's opinion. Okay, I think we got that. I'm curious if she'll get to a point where she starts giving us arguments for how minds could be changed in other states, because it is a state-by-state process. Thank you, Chicago Mike, at work and have to watch later. Also, hi, Scribe. Hi, Chicago Mike. Thank you so much. Those races include mayor and school board and city council.
Oh, is that what local races include? Huh, I had no idea.
And they also include the really long legalese ballot issues that take forever to figure out. Voters now have a laptop in reach at their home, and they can research candidates and issues on their own time. We also have research now that shows that voting by mail and voting at home makes voters more informed because they have all of that extra time, as opposed to being in person and worrying about the long line of voters behind you while you're trying to rush through. And the final, most important aspect of the results that we've seen out of Colorado is about civics for future voters.
Okay. Well, like I say, I don't have any particular problem with mail-in voting. I know that's a controversial thing to say, etc., but I don't really have a problem with it. So sure, if you want to implement that or advocate for that elsewhere, as long as people have the option, if they want to vote in person, if they want to see, physically dropping off their ballot, they should have that option. But if you want to go to a mail-in model, in the majority of situations, go for it. Make that pitch to the other states. If they decide upon it on their own volition, fine. I don't have a problem with it as long as people have options. And I think that's really the part of this that I can agree with her on in the roundabout. Options. That you're not required or you're not bottlenecked into one thing on one day and there's no way, shape, or form to do otherwise. That I'm not a fan of. Options, more freedom to vote. I'm all for that.
And I want to share my story with my 2 elementary children.
Oh, family anecdote. Okay, childhood or family anecdote. There we go. Well, is it an anecdote? Okay, just mentioning her kids. Tell me a story about your kids.
Every time my ballot comes before each election, one of my kids gets it, and they always start asking, when are we going to fill out mom's ballot?
Aha, there we go. Childhood family anecdote, circling that one. I had to wait for it. I wanted to be official. I want to jump the gun on that one. All right.
We sit down together. They read the instructions to me. They read the candidate names, and they ask me questions like, Mom, what does governor do? What does the mayor do? Maybe I want to be a mayor someday. We research those issues together. We talk about it, and it takes me forever to complete my ballot. But I know that I have created lifelong, civically engaged voters and future voters that understand that the choices they make on that ballot impact their communities and their world.
Okay. She hasn't injected any ideology into this, but even if she did, that'd be her prerogative. But I don't disagree that working with your kids to learn about the world is a beneficial thing. If all the other TEDx's and curriculum of fears I've done have said nothing else, I am all for parents taking an active role in the education of their children. So no argument from me here.
This is the type of voting experience that we want for every voter across the country. Many other states have taken notice, including California, Vermont, New Jersey, Hawaii.
Ridiculously liberal states, at least as far as politics goes. I don't know, and I honestly don't know what proportion of classically red states have mail-in voting as an option, or maybe not as the primary or default option, but at least as a concurrent option. I don't know off the top of my head.
All have expanded options for voting at home this year in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Americans are resilient. We need a voting process that is also resilient. From a pandemic, from burdens and barriers, from inequities, from unfairness, from foreign adversaries, and from administrative deficiencies.
Foreign adversaries? Okay. Which one of our elections was, I don't know, manipulated by foreign adversaries? Which one? Tell me which one where a foreign adversary came in and stuffed the ballot box or changed the totals or mind controlled the voters to vote a particular way because of a few Facebook posts. You tell me. I always get a little twitchy on that one because we went through years of Russiagate for nothing.
Across the country, voters are choosing to vote at home in record numbers.
Uh-huh.
It is safe, it is secure, and we have built-in security measures to deter and detect bad actors who try to interfere with the process.
If it's secure, why would you need to have other elements there to up security, and how could there be any bad actors? Okay, it may, for all I know, everything involved there, it makes it more secure. But no system is perfect, and a locked door only keeps out an honest man. So don't throw me guarantees that you can't keep. That's all. Okay. There's always going to be shrinkage. Or is that the correct? I think that's the correct. I'm thinking back to my old retail days where you always have to expect a certain level of either error in numbers or theft in a store, that kind of thing. I think, wasn't the term shrinkage? I think so. Thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. It's nice to hear the word race spoken on TED stage in a sane and actually inclusive context. It's surprisingly refreshing. I know, right? We haven't had the usual infuriating terminology here, which is, it's kind of a nice break.
Today, voting at home means paper ballots, but in the future, that might look very different.
No. If there's one thing I will say forever, when it comes to voting, there has got to be a paper trail. You talk about foreign actors. Okay, foreign actors become a bigger and more relevant concern as soon as you decide to move over to some sort of digital currency stuff. Okay? talk about uncertainty in the election results and everything else. Got to have a paper trail. That's the one thing that'll probably keep me a Luddite on that issue for the rest of my life. When it comes to stuff like that, I don't trust the digital stuff. Don't try telling me about blockchain and all that. Paper trail.
Voters deserve an awesome and safe voting experience, free from barriers and burdens. It's the politicians that serve us, not the other way around. You deserve excellence. Expect it, demand it, and advocate for it. Thank you.
Okay, just on that last point, I'm going to circle leaves out vital context. She said on several points that the politicians are the ones doing it. It's their fault, et cetera, et cetera. She didn't give me an example of that. She didn't back up that argument. Maybe she's correct in some fashion. I don't know. But in the course of her presentation, she never gave me an example, an active example or otherwise, that said, this is this way because the politicians said so. How did Colorado change their minds? How is California changing its mind? New Jersey, and on and on and on. If the politicians cannot benefit from a mail-in system and they want to prevent it, how are the politicians agreeing to it in these other states, as you've said? That kind of contradicts things a little bit. They didn't give me any actually, and also contradicts own point or argument a little bit there too. So I'm going to circle that one. Thank you to Redneck Ram for the Dogcat Fox. How's it going? I don't know. How's it going, Dogcat Fox? Wowie, wow, wow. I guess it's going okay. Of course, Dogcat Fox has sort of a low bar of satisfaction when it comes to things. As long as he's fed, he's kind of happy, right? Wowie, wow, wow. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Let's put on the bingo card so everybody can see it. I might have to zoom in on it here. Let's see. I have to do this. I have to save this and then refresh that. There we go. And then I have to zoom out a bit because, live TV. There we go. All right, there's the bingo card as I have it right now. I'll review it here in a second. Thank you again, Redneck Ram. Just got here watching from beginning. Let's make it a good one today. Well, good. Eye of the beholder. Not the most contentious TEDx or TED Talk that I've done recently, but that was kind of expected. All right, so on to the bingo card. Collectivize his own demographic. No, I mean, she brought up the women thing once, but didn't dwell on it, and it didn't become much of an issue. Systemic institutional. I'm hesitant to circle it on the basis of like voting system, because the systemic institutional thing is usually like, a prefix to sexism, racism, etc. And I don't know, like, if she'd said something like, the disenfranchised systems or something, maybe I'll have to take arguments for that one. Equity. She said inequity at one point, but she wasn't talking about equality of outcome. So again, I'm kind of hesitant, given the square kind of supposed to mean that. Plays victim. No. Microaggressions, unconscious bias. No. Privilege. No. Patriarchy. No. Weightless example. I didn't hear any weightless examples. Everything was relevant one way or the other. The only example that she brought up in comparison was Missouri, but also sort of the general idea of waiting in line and so on. And those all were relevant to her argument. Wage gap, no. Feminism, no. Marginalization. I'm going to circle that one in sort of the aggregate concept of people being disenfranchised. I'm just going to circle that one in general, not for a particular demographic or anything, but just the notion that the laws as they sit in other states, in our speaker's opinion, disenfranchise, i.e. marginalize voters. I'll just circle that one. White supremacy. Nope, she never brought up race or anything. Word salad. No, I understood her. Self-vilification or wretchedness. Nope. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. That one I'm a little iffy on, because she did just read off her book title. And the book title by itself, if that's the name of her book, that doesn't necessarily bring it up for no reason, because you're just reading a title. But again, maybe I'll take arguments for that one. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. No. Mind reading assumes motives. Well, the one thing that I kept getting a little irritated on was that she'd bring up the over 40% didn't vote because they found obstacles, and then she never brought up the other side of it. I don't know if that's mind reading assumes motives, but it's definitely leaving out another notion that's relatively common in this country, and that is the choice to not participate, which is legitimate if you choose not to. But I'll leave that one blank for now. Benevolent condescension. She was disagreeing with other states' policies. I never really felt there was a sense of her talking down, per se. I don't know. I'll have to think about that one. Anecdote that probably never happened. No, the only anecdote she brought up really was her and her kids, and nothing that she said about her kids talking to her about voting sounded outlandish, and then everybody clapped or something. It sounded reasonable to me. So, I'm going to have the bingo card there. I will now take arguments for squares to be circled. If you do have an argument for a square to be circled, be sure to tag me in your comments so that I can see it amongst everything else. Lexi Mad, she said inequity. She did say inequity, but she didn't talk about equity or equality of outcome or anything like that. And I'm hesitant because context and not using the word are two big factors in sometimes circling a square. If there's a lot of, I don't know. Chat, everyone, give me your weigh-in on that one, because she did say inequity. Does that constitute enough to circle the square? If you think so, put a 1 in the chat now. If you do not think so, put a 2. It's just a straw poll. I'm leaning towards not, but I will take your opinion into consideration. Let's see. I see a 1. I got a 2. I got a 2. Got a 1. Got a 2. Oh boy. Seems pretty even right now. 1, 3. Yeah, so do you think inequity counts for the equity square? 2, 42. Okay. I'm not seeing an overwhelming bunch of 1s, so I'll sit on it for now. If you have a better argument or something, I'll take it. Let's see. X439. Hey, look at all these other states who like what Colorado does. As a waitlist example, I mean, yeah, everybody else is doing it. Why don't you, kind of thing. And again, I do my best, and I'll just say this for future reference. I do my best to give the speakers some benefit of the doubt, some credit on certain things. And in this instance, her saying that it is a trend that is not completely on the outskirts, that it has some traction elsewhere, other states should consider doing it too, because our speaker believes in this system. I don't think that's a weightless example. I think that's her arguing that it's not some radical, crazy idea that nobody else would accept. That's my read on that. So let's see. Cannibalist Wizard Scribe word salad. She said voting should be fun. It's voting. What the fuck should be fun about it? Should be. That's not word salad. That's just an opinion. I mean, some people find it very utilitarian. I find it interesting myself. I get the voters pamphlet ahead of time, and I read through it, and I make marks and notes and things. I especially look at whether or not someone running for office has submitted a personal statement. Sometimes they don't. Or if they do, I then read it, and I look for spelling and grammatical errors. And I know this sounds very English major. However, here's my argument. If someone running for office, more often than not, obviously a legislative office or an office where they have to deal with legislation, If that person does not have either the ability or at least the care to proofread their own work as they're putting out a public statement to the, public, to the electorate, to gain my vote, if they don't care about at least looking to make sure they've literally dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's, why would I want this person in charge in any way, shape, or form of dealing with legislation that's going to affect my real life? That is something that I do look at when I'm thinking about who I'm going to vote for. I think it's very pertinent, at least in my mind. Let's see. Dr. Keeve, I do that too. I don't even have an English degree. Yeah. Like I say, it's got nothing to do with English degree. It's got really to do with how serious is this person about wanting my vote? What are they saying? What is their sales pitch for themselves? What is their education? What's their public service history, and so on? It doesn't have to be Rhodes Scholar material to convince me to vote for somebody. But, this is how they're presenting themselves to me if I don't see them at a rally or a debate or something. So that's pretty important. I don't see anybody else. So no more arguments for squares? I mean, I could see a little leeway here or there. I'll give it another minute or three here, and then we'll move on. Yeah, I was honestly thinking that she was going to be talking Electoral College. I didn't read the blurb on the page for the video itself, so I didn't know what to expect. But usually when it's like, let's change the voting system, more often than not, I hear something about eliminating the Electoral College. Thank you, the Gay Rascal. Voting should be harder, Heinlein style. Citizenship requires service. Joshua Sager, hello. I wouldn't judge based on press releases by politicians. More often than not, those are written by low-paid staffers and aides. I've been one. Well, okay, that might be true. But if someone is wanting my vote, and if that is the case, well, they've made a poor decision. And B, why wouldn't they want to be the one to deliver the message? You see, I can't know by looking at that it's not them talking. This is their statement. And so I have to take it as it comes at me. And if there's misspellings, if there's nonsense in there and so on, especially if someone who's running for office for the first time or something else, I have to work with what I'm given. So no, not throwing any shade to political aides and staffers and everything else. I know from personal and peripheral experience, they have a very thankless job in a lot of instances and almost never get any recognition, usually just end up being fall guys. But when it comes to the voters pamphlet, when it comes to getting my vote, I take what you present me, and I assume this is what you want me to see of you before I make my decision. Zeke Weiss, this one was tame in bingo card sense, but a lot of saying nothing or what is already said 100 times. Yeah, she was making one sales pitch over and over and over again. And in a lot of, like I said, in a lot of cases, I don't disagree with her. Fundamentally, I think voting should be as easy and as accessible as possible. And I think the easiest common denominator across the country, regardless of what the system is, state to state, would be at the very least extending the amount of time available in which you can vote. I think that would be a relatively simple thing that could be advocated across the country and probably not cause too much trouble. Obviously, it would increase the costs in some places where you have to have people on staff for longer and so on and so forth. But I think that'd be a worthy sacrifice to make sure that everybody that has the will and desire to vote has the opportunity to do so. Let's see. Thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. I agree with the Gay Rascal. Let's also bring back Spartan-style education. So you're a big fan of the Agoge? Okay. Thank you, the Redneck Ram. Oh, no. This B word here isn't advocating for fairness. She's advocating for ballots to be mailed to everyone with no ID check. She wants fraud. Well, Redneck Ram, I know you're currently in the past as we're talking now, but as I understand it, in Colorado, when you qualify for your identification, your driver's license or state ID, which requires all the other checks to begin with, at that point, you are registered. So one registration per one valid ID. As I understand it. If that is incorrect, I'm happy to be corrected in the comments or elsewise. Dr. Keeve, equity. Again, she said inequity. She didn't talk about equity. She wasn't talking about equality of outcome. She's using a completely different word, different meaning, different context. So I'm not keen to circle it. Zeke Weiss, why not make Election Day a national holiday so everyone is off from work, school, and such and can vote? There is no national holiday where everyone is off of work. There is no national holiday where everything shuts down. So the better idea is to extend the amount of time in which people can vote, or change it to something like, I don't know, change voting to the second weekend of whatever. So you have Saturday and Sunday, 48 hours in which to vote, something like that, at the very least. So it's not on a work day all the time. Why is it always Super Tuesday? Put it on the weekend, something like that. There are simple things that could be done that could at least alleviate some of the problems she's talking about. And they don't have to be too painful, I don't think. Let's see. Dr. Keefe, sorry I missed it if the argument was made against it. Yeah, it just doesn't fit. The thrust of her argument and the instance in which she used the word inequity doesn't count in my mind. It's just too opposite. And X439, Scribelight, is it not the corollary? If someone is talking about color blindness at great length, are they not discussing racism, even if it's never mentioned? See, here's the thing. The gist of her argument is that voting should be as accessible and easy for everyone. In that sense, her use of inequity is not referring to equality of outcome in a bad way, okay? Equality of outcome in some instances is not inherently bad. The equality of outcome of having the ability to vote is not a bad thing. It's not used in a context that's meant to divide. So in this instance, in this context, inequity or the corollary, in my mind, doesn't count. Again, I know it's a little bit ambiguous on the bingo card, but as we've seen over and over and over again, when people talk about equity, when it comes to race or gender or a plethora of other things, social issues, they're talking about an equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. They're talking about giving everybody the same outcome in society, in jobs, and so on and so forth. When it comes down to voting rights, that's where equity actually makes sense and is actually something that we should strive for. Voting access, voting rights. That's sort of that kind of equality of outcome under law is a legitimate thing to talk about. And especially in this instance of voting, I can't really call it the same thing. I know, I am splitting hairs down to the, nanogram here or whatever, but that's just how I see it. I hope you don't hate me too much for it. But even if I did circle equity, it wouldn't get us anywhere near a bingo. So with that, everyone, I think I'm going to call that here. This was not a bad TED Talk. It was a repetitive TED Talk. The case for mail-in voting has been going on for quite a while now. I wasn't sure what we were going to get. I wasn't sure if it wasn't going to be an electoral college argument, but here we are. Are voting systems perfect? No. Colorado's isn't perfect. I'm sure there are flaws. Missouri's isn't perfect. But like I said before, I do think that extending the amount of time, at the very least, in which people can vote would be an easy sell and would solve a lot of the issues. Because waiting in line for 6 or 7 hours just to vote, I'll tell you that's ridiculous. That is pretty ridiculous. So if that happens in places, there should be a better way of doing it. And we're at a state in our country's history where we should have a better way of doing that. But with that, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something, or at least had something to think about. If you have comments for me, or arguments, or dissatisfactions, or compliments, I'll take those too. You can put them in the comments below. I do appreciate those always. Also, something I rarely mention, I should do more of. If you share the link to these streams or any of my content on Twitter specifically, please be sure to tag me in that tweet. Make sure you put like a period or something at the front if I'm the first thing you put there so everybody can see it. Because I appreciate it when you guys tell people that I exist. And I like to personally thank you when you do. I really do appreciate that. Thank you, John Miller. Why would you talk about the Electoral College? We threw it away last election. That is a debate that has been raging for a year, and I don't have the time to get into it, so I'm going to leave that there. But thank you, John Miller. Again, everyone, thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you so much for your participation and your argumentation. And everyone who donated, thank you. Thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. If you'd like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents, you can find the both of us tonight on my channel, this channel, at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for The Lords of the Night, where we will talk about the news of the day, news stories you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Everyone, thank you again for joining me. Hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.